We mentioned in class during the lecture that you could really take any great master figure drawing and take it apart like a carburetor, or take a watch apart. Look at the individual elements and then put everything back together again. And so, following up on our ghost skeleton video last time, we're going to start adding some muscle groups to our ghost skeleton, and we're going to start with the major muscles of the lower limbs. And today, we're going to reinforce the idea that all of these reference materials, like the muscle chart on the left, are kind of like training wheels. And after a certain amount of time, you can just toss the training wheels away. And that happens very, very naturally and very organically with repetition. So keeping in mind the master drawings that we started the video with, we're going to focus in on the muscle groups of the lower limbs. So in this method of learning and evolving into really internalizing all of these proportions and memorizing these muscles in a way in which it becomes just second nature, my recommendation is that we start with a piece of 18 by 24 newsprint, and then we take away 2 inches at the bottom, 2 inches at the top of the page. So we have a 20-inch field to draw in. We divide that in half, which represents the pubis symphysis, which is the halfway point in the human figure. And then we take those halves and divide them in half into 4 head units at the bottom, 4 head units on the upper field. And then we use those landmarks that we've already talked about, where we measure 2 head units from the bottom, and that's where we find the patella. And those other landmarks really help us kind of zero in. So the very next thing that we want to do is start adding these major muscle groups. So here in this exercise, I'm using a Cretacolor 8B woodless graphite, really terrific drawing instrument. And you're going to see, keeping in mind the figure drawings that we started the video with, that as we add muscle groups, if we use a really soft touch on the page, we're also adding a certain amount of shading and value. So I'm going to put in a couple of the muscle groups, beginning with the quadriceps. And the quadriceps, of course, is a 4-muscle group that are the prominent muscles of the thigh. And we'll review those after I draw them in. So let's go through that process. So in this phase of the drawing, all I've really done is to consult my muscle chart here, and I've added the 4 major muscles that comprise the quadriceps, and that is the vastus lateralis, the vastus intermedialis, the vastus medialis, and the rectus femoris. So all of these muscles, of course, attach to the hip, but it's really important to realize that these muscles are not flat events, of course. They're winding around the leg, and they're starting at one joint and bypassing and going beyond the next joint with the help of tendinous attachments. And then 2 other really beautiful, interesting muscles form sort of the inner curving plane of the thigh, and those muscles are the gracilis muscle and the sartorius. So just with those muscles, just by having added those muscles, my former ghost skeleton is starting to look a lot like a figure drawing, and starting to have a lot of the aspects of some of the master figure drawings that we started the video with. In the lower limb, the muscles that we really should pay a lot of attention to knowing about is a muscle called the Peroneus Longus, which gives us our really beautiful medial architecture. And then there's another muscle called the tibialis anterior that kind of like winds around the leg. It's important, again, to keep in mind that these muscles are almost like a basket weave. These are not flat events on the body. They wind around, they interweave, they go beyond joints from the top down and from the bottom up with the help of tendinous structures like the iliotibial band that starts at the pelvis and terminates in the knee and then transitions into other tendons. But you can see all I've done is map out the muscles, and it's starting to look like the superficial anatomy that we see in very muscular models. Okay, so to polish things off and make things look like something like a master figure drawing, I've done a couple of things. I've gone over to our handout, our collection of knees. Knees are a lot of fun to draw. There have been a lot of very famous knees in the history of figure drawing. So basically what I've done is to just kind of articulate some of these intersections and these three-dimensional topographies and just kind of bring them out a little bit more. I've accentuated some of the muscles as they overlap, again in a basket weaving sort of a spirit. Muscles that are starting here and wrapping around the leg, muscles that are starting here and wrapping around the knee, muscles that start here and attach here to the head of the tibia. And really all I've done is just to go through and just kind of accent and articulate some of these topographies. I really haven't added much to a simple mapping of major muscles. The other thing that I've gone ahead and done, we've talked about responsive line in class, and here I tried to provide a pretty good example. So this line, this profile line, isn't a whole bunch of like scratchy estimations. It's one smooth kind of expression, like just take a deep breath, let your breath go, and turn that exhale into a perfect line. But that line is informed by what I know is inside the figure. So there's a little bit of a tension here at the iliac crest. There's a little bit of a concavity as these tendinous groups pull the surface anatomy away from the pelvis. And then I'm thinking smooth muscle, smooth line, tighter tendons, tighter line, softer muscle, tendons, and lateral malleolus, that ankle bone down there. So my line is responding to what I know is there. So I'm not just making an outline and filling it in. I'm drawing the figure from the inside out, and this line is informed by anatomical fact. And here, for example, this slight curvature on the medial aspect is a result of the sartorius muscle weaving over the gracilis and adductor longus, muscles that you don't really have to memorize. But that's it. That is the recipe for getting to sort of the plane of master figure drawing. So next time around, we'll start working on some of the muscles of the upper anterior aspect, and then we'll move on to the limbs, to the arms, and some other features. Thanks.